What would you do with the power of a god? And to clarify, I don't mean the fun gods that drink and party and have orgies on clouds. I'm talking about the kind that hold the threads of life in the tips of their fingers and a rusty pair of scissors in the other. You could finally lighten up traffic on your morning commute, shorten the line at the grocery store checkout, or maybe, just maybe, fight crime and people pop some criminals. The latter is Light Yagami's choice when he discovers a death note on his way home from school, kicking off one of the most suspenseful and unique manhunt stories that I've ever watched, while also giving me reasonable suspicions of any man that keeps a journal. So, grab a fresh pack of pens and get yourself a terrifying imaginary friend, because today we're going to be looking at 5 ways that Death Note tells a suspenseful story, while also going over one regrettable shortcoming of the show. But I want to save that until the end, because why? Is it because it adds curiosity and suspense? That's exactly why. That and it forces you to watch the whole video. Like, subscribe, and here's a picture of a baby turtle as a thank you. Anyway, let's jump right into the Sisterhood of the Murderous Diary with point number 1. Use curiosity to drive the initial interest in your story. Like my first Taiwanese ping pong show, what initially got me invested in Death Note was my curiosity. As audience members, we understand that the Death Note is real, because we watch Ryuk drop it. But then we are left to wonder who will find the notebook and what they will do once they have it. It's fine though, because most people wouldn't even test to see if the notebook they found on the street is literally death by 1,000 paper cuts, and would probably just throw it out or not use it. Right? From the moment Light finds the Death Note up until the first time he uses it, there is now an additional desire to see the book in action, just as much as there is a curiosity in seeing what someone would do with its power. What the storytellers are doing here is providing us with a curiosity tickler, which is not what your grade school gym teacher claimed it was. A curiosity tickler, I'm just gonna copyright that sucker, is a device used to pique your audience's interest in the story before the action really gets started. We see this strategy all the time in fiction. Ooh, what's in the box? What was that sound in the basement? Who's at the door? The lack of knowing serves as a vacuum sucker for your attention span, creating a need to know, and therefore a need to watch the next episode when they open the box, read the next chapter when they go into the basement, or open the door and accidentally walk in on your parents doing what all parents do, thinking about how great their lives were before you were born. Once Light opens that door by writing a criminal's name in the Death Note, he is shocked to discover that he has found a real stack of murderous paper, and we, as audience members, are thrilled because now that our first 2 questions are satisfied, we immediately line up a third question. What is Light going to do next? And that brings us to point number 2. Keep your characters in jeopardy during their quest. So, this one time at scout camp, we were fed hot dogs in the mess hall, and I saw a bluish one somewhere in the mix. So I passed on lunch that day, out of the goodness of my 12-year-old heart. But for the rest of the afternoon, I got to play a very fun game called Who is Going to Shit Their Pants? Would it be my balding and sweaty scoutmaster, the overweight and overly protective mothers, those 2 kids that came to camp on court orders, or perhaps it was everyone? Everyone shit their pants. All the hot dogs were rancid, and it was glorious. But my point is that I had a blast waiting to see when and which of my scoutmates were going to get their first aid and wilderness survival merit badges. The takeaway here is that it is fun to watch and wait for something bad to happen to someone that isn't you. And this is the strategy Death Note uses to keep us invested in the story after Light decides to use the notebook to fight crime. Now we need to take a step back and look at our hero, I guess. Light is oddly sympathetic. He didn't ask for the Death Note, he had a lawful neutral take on justice, and he had a bright future ahead of him until Ryuk, well, got bored and screwed that all up. Because we connect with Light during the first 10 minutes that he hasn't become elevated to killer god status, we're kinda rooting for him. Maybe not in giving out more heart attacks than McDonald's, but at least in his pursuit of a better world. Now, where have I heard that before? Because we care about Light, and because we can at least empathize with his idea to kill criminals, we don't want him caught. However, since this is exactly the last thing we want to happen. It needs to be one of the most probable outcomes for our story. When writing, you're essentially an abusive boyfriend, threatening the audience with everything that they never wanted so that they stick around. That's called love right there. But now, why the hell would we do that? As storytellers, we never want to make things easy for our characters, and we always need to keep something at risk so that the story doesn't get boring. To do this, something must always be at risk, which, in Death Note's case, is Light's life. So that's pretty straightforward. All we need to do now in order to ramp up tension is put a genius detective on the case and have him up Light's ass like we're back at the Taiwanese ping pong show. Right? Like the tension in an imaginary romantic relationship. Too little will take the excitement and danger out of your sex life. But too much tension and the police take you away, and now your sex life is in prison. What we want to do is strike up a balance of high and low tension, while never letting our foot completely off the accelerator, and this brings us to point number 3. Learn how to properly pace your scenes. Pacing is an art form in and of itself, meaning that I can only give you pointers, but a lot of pacing comes down to experience and feel and ripping out your hair. Death Note has a way of leaving me tired at the end of every episode, but still wanting to push forward in order to see what happens next. The show had a way of bringing me to the brink of cardiac arrest by having Light almost get caught, having L almost get murdered, or by incorporating some strange twist like the introduction of the Yotsuba group or Misa Amane occurring at the end of an episode. But those are just cliffhangers, the storytelling equivalent of farting during a eulogy. Sure, you have my attention for a moment, but I'll quickly lose interest if nothing exciting happens before or after the fart. Death Note's suspense and pacing can be thought of as a slow release of toxic gas into a crowded room. Vaguely, we become aware of it, and by the time we are fully aware of the danger, we need that panic on full throttle. So how do we manage pacing and, in effect, suspense? Oh shit, is this a list within a list? You bet your gosh darn biscuits it is. So let's kick off list number 2 with point number 1. Give your characters something to do with their hands. Oh god, this is opening an entire Costco box of worms, but I'm going to do my best to keep this brief. Giving a character something to do during a conversation, either with themselves or with somebody else, lets me see what the character is not saying. They say they're fine as they rip a flower out of the ground. They say that they're so sorry Mrs. Porterhouse passed away while joyfully fluffing their hair. They say, I love you, while driving away to Mexico with another man. If a character is acting in a way that is different from what they are saying, we have a base level of tension because of the dissonance. But base level is not enough for this highbrow channel, so let's ramp this bitch up with point number 2. Set a timer. We've all seen The Last Goodbye in a movie where the train or boat is making its final boarding call, and our hero and their love interest are trying to figure out whether or not they should take their baby with them to America or leave it for the wolves. Pretty sure that was Titanic. The boarding call sets a timer which increases tension in a scene. We specifically see this in Death Note when Light is counting down blocks to the police station with Naomi. We are given a distance and therefore a time during which a task must be completed. As time passes by, my likelihood of a stress-induced stroke increases along with the tension. And, speaking of time, this video is probably around 9 minutes, so let's wrap this digression up with point number 3. Combine a timer with a task. When character X finishes eating all of the poisoned cake, she will die. When character Y takes out the last bag of trash, he'll find the body in the dumpster. When character Z pulls the final nail out of the floorboard, the entire house will collapse. This countdown in conjunction with a task gives the audience a sense of progress or a sense of time running out, either of which gives the impression that a story is moving forward. But the rate at which we move forward is still up to you, the storyteller. And that brings us back to pacing. Sure, we can show that time is running out for Light by showing L put the last sugar cube in his tea and stating a clue that points directly towards Light, but we can't have that run for an entire episode. That would be exhausting. Do you think I look like the kind of person that can run for an entire 30 minutes? Instead, we start the episode with something as unthreatening as L showing up on Light's campus, followed by an unassuming game of tennis that mimics the battle between the criminal and detective. Also note the points and how this is a form of a timer. First one to reach however many points wins the game. I have no clue how tennis works. Anyway, then we have the oblivious Killer God number 2 walk in as Killer God number 1 tries to have her learn Elle's true name. This is akin to performing a task with a finite amount of time. And finally, we wrap it all up by having Light jump the gun and calling Misa's phone. A phone she no longer has because Elle picked her pocket, leaving us with a cliffhanger for the next episode. It's like literary foreplay, and Death Note executes this foreplay phenomenally well in every episode. But what's that one regrettable aspect of Death Note I mentioned at the very beginning? Death Note is a thriller. Its main focus is to keep us on the edge of our seat without burning us out, which means that the storytellers need to get to the action as quickly as possible. And while this is great because it hooks the viewer early on, it caused the story to gloss over something that I think would have been a lot of fun to play with during the entire series, which was Light's internal conflict. Everyone calm down. Or don't. Leave an angry comment, it helps the channel. But what I'm saying is that every protagonist, good or bad, should have some doubt and conflict about what they are doing. My friend had a fake Death Note. I mean, obviously it was fake, but neither of us would even jokingly write someone's name in it. So why didn't we get more of that from Light? I know that Light is a little hesitant to use the Death Note at first. I know he slowly escalates from "let's kill just the bad people" to
I am justice.
to
I am God!
I know the story makes a solid effort to show the similarities between Light and Elle, and how under different circumstances they would have been friends, but can I just say, it would have been pretty gosh darn swell to see Light consider turning himself in, to consider that maybe he was in the wrong for the first 15-ish episodes before fully committing to the God complex. Whether it's a horror, thriller, adventure, or literature piece, I love to see the human side of characters, the fallibility of their thoughts, the doubts in their own dreams, the duality of a boy wanting the power of a god while realizing he is becoming the devil. If I wrote Death Note, this would be the one thing I would want to add to the story. And that's the point of this channel, to give you guys the opportunity and skills to write the stories you've always wanted to write. So, like this video, subscribe and turn on notifications for the weekly upload, and share it with your friends so that they know what kind of weird stuff you get into during your lunch break. And, as always, go write the best story possible. Beep, bleep, deep, bleep, bleep. The end.